Dennis is an example of how a degree and a knowledge base can change over time and make contributions to society as society changes. So Dennis had an electrical engineering degree from Clemson in 1959, and what he learned at Clemson enabled him not only to the rise to the highest levels of management and executive leadership, but allowed him to be on the forefront and on the frontier of technical advances in fields such as optics and quantum computing.
He's a phenomenal listener. He is always available and he listens. And you know, the man with wisdom is the man who says few words at the table, but the few words that he says has impact. And you know, that's Dennis to a T. Beyond what he does, you know, for Clemson, he's very involved in his church, his community. Giving back and being available and listening is what really sets him apart. And from a personal standpoint, he's been one of the most influential mentors to me. I'm exceptionally proud of Dennis. I mean, I think, you know, when you have somebody that checks so many different boxes in terms of, you know, military service, taking his education in electrical engineering, and going out and being a contributor to a major corporation like IBM for 30 years, and then stepping back and taking your skill set and your experience and bringing that to NC State and managing the Centennial campus. But all that time, you know, continuing to recognize and give back to his alma mater, it's been continuous.
His engagement with Kerf as the board chair, Dennis has always been and continues to be and will also be into the future, a long future, I hope, a thought leader in all of those things that Clemson has wanted to do, Dennis has already done. And so his continued willingness to guide us, to advise us, and when needed to pick up the phone and get things moving, you know, is very much a part of our nomination of him for the Thomas Green Clemson Academy and his selection.